packaging on some level.
It's called a pressure sensitive label.
There you go.
Right.
Sorry.
It's called you just put stickers on cardboard and then you ship it out the door. That's
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Point taken.
Snap.
can't start calling
Divisive this morning.
pressure sensitive labels.
Pressure sensitive labels.
Corrugated fiber board.
Yes.
Pressure sensitive labels.
All right. So what percentage do you think has packaging?
110.
Yeah.
I give 110%.
110%. Totally. That sounds like a very reasonable percentage. If it's not 100, it's very, very high. Like it's very close to it. Now, if you think about it, how many of our consumer goods then ride in a corrugated box during its life? Whether it's a part that's going to be made into the whole, or if it's the actual good, what do you think that number is?
97.25%.
80.
Yeah, it's still very high. I don't know what the exact thing is. The trade publications will tell you it's as high as 95%.
Wow.
But it's very high.
What did I win?
You win a year subscription to Pet Food Magazine.
Bam.
Yes, Cat Fancy.
Fancy.
Yes. That was probably arriving in a corrugated box at its distribution center.
Maybe.
Yeah. And like Jonathan Quinn says, right? Everything you buy is packaged at some point, even bananas.
Yeah.
We got I think somebody in here put in that bananas come in Gaylords. So
in a bag in a box. Yeah.
I was at the grocery store the other day. They were in a bag. They were in a corrugated box. They had molded pulp layers in them and all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fancy.
So, but that being said, so packaging is an interesting trend to keep up with because it is a very good indicator for how things are going in our economy. And what's really surprising is, and this is a question that I don't know the answer to, right? So another one I don't know the answer to. Imagine that. I don't know all things. Really, in the last 20 plus years, we truly haven't seen what I'm going to call growth in the corrugated industry. So it hasn't really kept up with how much our society has grown from a population standpoint. I mean, through the first half of this year, shipments are the same as they were in 1996. So that has me scratching my head, trying to figure out how in the world we could be shipping more goods, feeding more people, and yet the volume, the square footage, right? Because I know the tons, as paper changes, tons change, but is the square footage of things is about the same? Is it because of right sizing and we've made more boxes and they're just smaller? Like it's so these are some of the questions that I ask. Why in the world would our consumption not be growing? And everybody likes to, I see all these articles from time to time. Oh, the corrugated box market set to grow at a 6% compound annual growth rate between now and 2030. And I go, based on what?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a good economic indicator and to try to get an idea of what's going on. Second quarter, we saw volume fall again. It fell about 7, almost 8%. Pull up my numbers here. 7.8% on a year-over-year basis. And largely due to what everyone was calling destocking. That's not when you take your socks off.
Then what is it?
Oh.
So
I wasn't ready.
You weren't ready for that.
Sorry,
making room in their warehouse, right?
Yeah. Well, so if you think about like a year and a half ago, things were crazy in the corrugated packaging market. I mean, absolutely nuts. We saw
unprecedented.
Unprecedented. Great word. We saw lead times that were 5 and 6 and 10 weeks, depending on where you were in the country. And so if you think about a manufacturer and you think about how they had to approach ordering at that point, Corey, when you think about some of your manufacturers, what does that order pattern look like? They order for what they have orders for, right? Then they order, like they put on a little safety stock maybe.
Oh yeah.
and then
And-
they might have to put on.
Ask their partners like us to store even more.
There you go.
Max out warehouses everywhere, which is where the destocking comes in, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to make room for new right-sized packaging, new, more sustainable options, things like that.
Yeah. So we saw that all through the channel, right? Whether it was with companies like Aurora that might be warehousing for customers, or whether it was the brand themselves that thought, okay, well, we normally go through 10,000 a week, but with the lead time being 8 weeks, you couldn't order 10,000.
Right.
You had to order, and you had to put in enough time so you have safety stock and you have the lead time for the next order. So they may have put in an order for 80,000 or 100,000.
Right.
And at some point, our consumer habits changed. So we stopped buying the goods. Avelio and I were talking about this right before we came on. Our shopping habits changed sometime over the last year. And now these manufacturers had ordered all of these boxes and they didn't have the demand for their product. In some cases, they had product in boxes, in warehouses, ready to go, but they just didn't have buyers for it.
Yeah.
So this was largely the blame for the last year.
Ryan, is there any like what is the impact of, think about like pack size? You mentioned the right sizing, and then also is there a correlation between e-commerce and paper mailers and that type of situation where you can actually put your folding carton into a paper mailer and ship it out rather than a corrugated box? I don't know if you track that or not.
So we are doing our best to keep our thumb on the pulse of that there. And we did see, for instance, last year that from an e-commerce standpoint, the total volume of shipments fell by 2%, which is kind of perplexing because e-commerce as a revenue standpoint didn't necessarily fall 2%. Like there's some cloudy data out there. Through the first half of this year, both UPS and FedEx saw volumes decline. The second quarter, we saw the shipment volume decline almost 10%. Some of that we can explain, some of it we can't explain. Is it that e-commerce data is being clouded by, online ordering, but curbside pickup?
Oh,
I would hate to think that Carvana or something like that is being lumped into e-commerce, but I mean that is e-commerce, unfortunately, and that's not going to show up in a box.
right.
Hope not. But then you also kind of look at e-com, just the way people order e-com, which is they'll buy multiple items, they'll try things on, and then there's returns, right? And there's like multiple returns at times.
Good point.
So are those? It's the same shipper, but does that typically account? Is that counted for in e-com shipments?
It certainly could be. I know Amazon has a very multifaceted approach to how they do returns. Are you the biggest culprit?
No. I'm just looking at Paul Jenkins' comment here. He's like, "Who's going to win for the best beard?" And
you win,
hands down.
Not me.
Bebe Matos. Yeah.
But you can take your returns to like Whole Foods. You can take it to the UPS store, or you can just put it as packaging, ship it back, and so there's a whole like reverse logistics aspect to this that people are trying to figure out as well. But that being said, I mean, overall package volume is still down, whether we're talking about returns or not.
Yeah.
Are people reusing boxes more? Are you seeing that? Is that something is there any data there?
I don't know that there is a lot of data on that. I know from an e-commerce standpoint, there has been a push to using kind of I'm going to say the Kizix box. Shout out to Kizix friends.
Great shoes.
Where you have a pressure sensitive adhesive tape followed by a tear tape followed by another pressure sensitive tape, so that the consumer, if they need to send it back, they can use the same package.
For the record, I don't care what you call tape.
Okay.
Yeah, just
tape is ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so dumb.
So we see the same thing with different shipping bags as well.
Yeah.
You know.
So, all right. So what's the takeaway here? Box demand is down. Shipments are down.
But Fox demand is up here
Yes.
on the packaging.
So are you guys, you three here and everybody that's listening, are you buying less stuff online? Do you find yourself that you're buying less things today than you were, say, 6 months ago? Or is it pretty consistent with what you were doing before?
Less, I would say.
Yeah.
You're buying less? What about you, Adam?
I think we are spending more in the retail. There seems to be that we go to, retail store, Costco and Kroger and that kind of stuff more often than we are getting in deliveries and shipments. Certainly since 2.5, 3 years ago. It was a lot of e-commerce then, and now it's certainly tapered off in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wait for Andrew to ask his wife if they're buying more or less. Yeah, I know for us, like, we were talking earlier, Ryan and I were talking about this, like, about 2 weeks ago. We just had the conversation of, hey, let's just take a look at this budget and what are we actually buying? Because I got kids in sports and they're like, oh, I need new gloves, I need new suit, I need new this. And it's just like, all right, just Amazon, one click it, and stuff just shows up every day. But it wasn't up until like just recently where it's like, all right, let's take a moment, let's take a look and see what we're actually purchasing. And Kevin here's a little bit more than 6 months ago, but a lot less than before the pandemic. And so, yeah, pandemic spending was crazy for everybody.
Right. That's very, very normal, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that we did notice, kind of in my position, I follow not only packaging companies, but those who consume packaging. So I'll listen to what publicly traded companies say about their overall volume. I mean, most people don't know this, but food is kind of a big deal, and they're one of the biggest.
Yeah.
Shocker, right? But they're one of the biggest consumers of corrugated packaging, and so you can look at companies that consume or that make food and see a good proxy as to what might be happening. And almost everyone that I kind of dropped in and listened to their earnings calls, their volume was down, mid single digits or double digits in the second quarter. And so I was telling Avelio, when I go to the grocery store now, I'll take my kids along with me, and I will basically say, listen, you can get whatever, if it's on the list, you can, if it's cereal, they'll just put cereal. So get whatever you want. Yeah. It just has to be on promotion. Right. And so it just awakens them to the idea that there are promotions out there where brands want to move more of their product. And just this week when we went, we reduced our grocery bill by 30% just by buying on promotion.
Wow.
And for that, I mean, this is a small data point, but I can tell you we do print a lot of instant redeemable physical coupons. And that is up. The amount of people requesting them, the larger brands, their orders are up. So, we tend to have an inverse relationship with, especially in the food industry, right? Like when the economy is doing well, coupons aren't as prevalent. I mean, they still do them, right? But you start seeing that uptick and it's like, oh, okay, there must, so the correlation between those earnings calls, like, hey, we're down, would seem to indicate, okay, yeah, that does make sense why IRC orders would be more important. And with the destocking too, right? Like you're trying to get stuff off the shelves.
Yeah. One of the other things that came through in a lot of the calls, both from packaging producers and from the brands themselves, was that now, even though we are seeing some deflation, right, some or disinflation, as they will say sometimes,
that's less scary.
It's less scary.
Disinformation.
I think is so the relative prices are still, higher than they were several years ago. And with interest rates rising, it's creating a situation where now the value of this inventory is a lot weightier than it used to be.
Good
And so
point.
we are seeing some trends where the retailers aren't bringing in the same volumes that they once were. And this has tremendous implications across the entire supply chain. So first, I mean, it changes the way the orders are coming in, but it also changes the cadence of the stuff that's going out. So for people who care about recycling, the recycling rate just came out this last week. OCC recycling is, I won't say it's struggling, but supply is not keeping up to where it once was. And its supply is not as great as demand. I don't want to make that sound like demand is going crazy. It's just not keeping up with demand. And therefore, like the price of OCC is going up slightly when all other recovered materials are not doing that. So it creates some very strange market conditions.
What was that number, Ryan?
What number is that?
The OCC recycling. What's the
So
corrugated recycling?
the number that is published by the American Forest and Paper Association was 93 point, maybe like 93.6 or something like that. It was a very high rate.
And you adjust it for reality, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because based on the calculations that they make, it would be very conceivable to think that recycling rates could hit like triple digits. We could see a year, if we had really good collections, we could see a recycling rate at 104%. And and so the narrative that like the recycling rate is 93% of boxes get recycled, they wouldn't have that same narrative at 104%. That would be silly. 104% of boxes get recycled.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a comparison of two numbers, and
Right.
and so we think just based on the imports and things like that, we think that rate is probably more in the mid 60s as like a real figure,
Hmm.
which is still something to be celebrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But then I think going back to one of your earlier appearances when we talked about recycling rates and the reality of that, most of this OCC is not coming from consumers. Like this is coming from
Yeah.
big box stores.
Yeah.
Right?
90.
Like this is the Walmarts and
Yeah.
Costco's,
90
not mom and pop.
somewhere like 90 to 92 or 93, even as high as 93% is going to come from the bigger stores. And curbside recycling is just a small, 7, 8, maybe 10% on a great year.
Okay. Yeah, and I just want to make sure because I know people listening to this are going to quote some of these numbers, and we don't want somebody going out there going, "Yeah, you got to move to corrugate because it's, it's like 104% recycling rate." It's like, no,
Yeah.
and I did just
Ryan,
see a brand out there saying that that they've moved into PCW, and then asterisk, and down below it was pre-consumer waste.
Oh, geez.
Pre has a P too.
Well, so here's the thing: is in the corrugated space,
Yeah.
when you're talking about distribution, a Walmart that's getting a master carton is the consumer.
Right.
It's so I would like to try to change the language a little bit to be more precise, and I'll say like post-commercial, post-residential, post-industrial, or so there's another grade of recycled paper that's called double line kraft. It is lumped in with OCC a lot of times in reporting. It's not old. It was never a corrugated container, but it is something that even has a premium because it's super clean. And
what would
that's how
that be
they sought
used
after.
for? Like grocery bags?
So it is it's highly sought after in the export market because it's the highest kind of grade of recovered paper. But a lot of times if a new mill, we have 4 new paper mills that have started up making containerboard, they like that because again, it's the very high quality fiber.
What's a product that would be made out of that?
I mean, any of the recovered paper products could be made from it. It's a very small percentage that is what we call DLK. It's maybe 3 million tons a year, something like that. It's not huge. We estimate it at about 8% of total consumption.
Wow.
That's the other thing about any recycling rate. It is always going to be an estimation. It doesn't matter if I do it or anybody else.
No, we got Robert Evans coming in saying, pretty much confirming the same thing is happening in the UK. right? So I think we're kind of feeling it all over the place.
Well, it's a great time to be a buyer,
Yeah.
though. I mean, with so many companies wanting to keep up and to hit their earnings and to get the volume out, there are going to be lots of promotions. And so, go to the grocery store, look for the promotions, take part in them.
But also, I would even say, like, if you're a corrugated buyer, where there was that period of time where the power dynamics had shifted to
Yeah.
the manufacturers, and now you've got all these manufacturers who many of whom tried to scale up, and now the demand is down. It's like you probably have grabbed back the power of we're seeing more RFPs and these kind of professional buying groups doing their job, right? They should be doing their job. So
Yeah.
it seems like it's back to what I would call like normative seller buyer relationships in the packaging market. You had a good run, sellers. You had a good little run. And now you gotta like
Back
know
to
what you're
reality.
doing and solve
Yeah.
problems and uncover all the things. You can't just be like, yeah, we can get it to you in 5 weeks. And
Not anymore. You can
Not
get it in 2 days, 5
Right.
days.
right.
Like if your supplier says they can't get it to you for 5 weeks,
Yep.
you don't have to look too far.
No.
No.
You'll find somebody that can turn it over very quickly.
Correct.
Yeah, I would say the just going back to some of the stuff we talked about in the past, you don't always have to buy B-Flute. Like now it's a good time where you can actually like review all of your packaging and see if there's an opportunity to go into like something thinner, something that's going to help reduce your spend, not just on the board but also on shipping and warehousing. You do have, the buyer does have the upper hand at this point. So like you flex that, don't be afraid to shop around for your corrugate at this point. It's like find what makes the most sense for you. You'd also mentioned that there was, like Adam covered, there was a lot more mills coming online. I think it was like 10% more output. And then of course it was in that range, right, Ryan? Like we were last year.
So from a paper mill standpoint, it increased 5%. One of the things, kind of getting back to the now's a good time to kind of shop around narrative. While the mills increased 5%, so many new converting machines hit the marketplace that the converting capacity probably went up 25%, maybe even more.
A lot of investment there.
There's been a lot of investment. A lot of people can turn orders over very quickly because they have really high speed machines. They're very efficient. In some cases, we've heard from box producers that they're running through the same volume of orders in like 3 hours that they were doing all day before, because they have new equipment that's just that much faster.
Yeah. So it's hard to keep up across all this, just technology advancement, demand.
Same volume of orders
in like Whoa.
3 hours.
That was a weird echo. But as we start wrapping up here, we did want to share this, which is something, Brian, you kind of shared with us, which was kind of cool. This is also changing things in what's happening out there. It is like some of this right-sized packaging that's automated.
Yeah.
Like this is reducing the amount of material that's being used out there every day.
Yep.
Because now instead of just having the one shipper or the 3 shippers that you buy, you're actually just buying sheets of corrugate and being able to deploy this in real time.
Yeah.
So how's
things
this?
Things like that are gonna make an impact at some point. The number of machines that are on the marketplace from any one of the several companies that make these machines. It's a very good install base, but it's not necessarily big enough right now that it's going to see a massive drop. Just last year, well, in Amazon's 2022 sustainability report, they said that the number of shipments that they did that shipped in its own container increased by 3%. Now, they shipped like 4.6 billion shipments. Okay. So This is just a ridiculous number. So 3% is a very big number. And we can estimate that and try to figure out what it meant in terms of tonnage. And it's a lot. I mean, it's not necessarily significant that it's going to be like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? But every little bit is going to be adding up.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Yeah.
That's a big impact. I'm watching that closely. The impact of SIOC. I think that's going to affect all of us in the packaging industry and all of us as people.
Well, one of the things I was going to say is there in the sustainable packaging realm, we kind of have two parallel tracks. You've got people who are super hyper focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which is imperative. Then you also have this other parallel track that we have to acknowledge that we're running out of landfill space.
Yeah.
And so do you highlight your greenhouse gas emission reduction first and then try to promote circularity? Or do you promote circularity first and then try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And I don't know that there's a right answer here because both are very important. And I think that's just up to each individual brand as to how they carry out their sustainability plan. But we have to acknowledge that there's more than one way to skin this cat.
I think that's maybe a perfect segue. Not skinning cats. I don't even know a way to skin a cat. That's gross, Ryan. But next week we're going to have Michael Ferrari on. We're going to talk about landfill and waste circularity and some of the ideas he has towards that. So stay tuned for next Monday when we go from Fox and Friends to Ferrari and Friends.
Oh,
That didn't work. I'm so sorry. F flute. Yeah.
Wah, wah.
But, I tried.
Yeah, but Jonathan North is asking about beyond circularity. What about reusable packaging? I think this is a topic that keeps going, and I think the one thing that we always walk away from is that every brand has their own approach. They don't all necessarily have they're not all necessarily looking at packaging as like a key area of sustainability. And it's just our up to us to help them understand. And by us, I mean all of us, the ones that are listening, that are watching, us up here is helping brands understand like what sustainability can look like, and then helping them decide what makes the most sense for them to deploy, right? Because every brand's a little bit different types of products, different supply chain. It's not just the bag or the box that the product arrives in. It's everything that goes into that entire process. And if you can help like minimize one area or create something that's reusable, I know, there's a lot of different opportunities. Corey, Adam, myself, we're all, always available to answer any questions or help you kind of figure out what that means for your brand. And then Ryan's always going to come on here and tell us that box demand is down. He's going to come on here one of these days and be like, it's up 300%, Eureka.
I can't wait.
Crazy.
I can't wait.
It'll be amazing. But I appreciate everybody that joined us today. We're going to wrap this up here. Check us out. Coming up soon. We're going to Vegas.
Less than a month. Yeah. See you all there.
So if you're heading to Vegas,
I'll be in Vegas this week. If anyone's going to Super Zoo 2023, I'll be there on Thursday. It's for the pet industry. So I'm excited to go check out the show. I've never been before.
Yeah. Go pet Adam. That'll be a good time.
It's
And
a terrible beard.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
All right. So check us out in Vegas. Reach out to us if you're going to be there. We'll make it fun. All right. We'll see you guys.
Live from Studio 3, this is Packaging Today with Evelio Matos.